Oh hello, and welcome, I am Nikola Tesla. I am very happy to see that you are interested in learning who I am. I made a huge impact on how the people of the world use electricity to this day. Come on and take a journey with me. I was born in Smiljan, Croatia, on July 10, 1856. I was one of 5 children, including siblings Dane, Angelina, Milka, and Marika. My interest in electrical invention was spurred by my mother, Duka Mandic, who invented small household appliances and had the ability to memorize lengthy Serbian epic poems. I credit my mother for my own interest in inventing and photographic memory. My father, Milutin I, was a Serbian Orthodox priest and a writer, and he pushed for me to join the priesthood. But my interests lay squarely in the sciences. In 1870, I started high school at the Higher Real Gymnasium in Karlowitz, Austria. As I look back, I recall watching my teacher's physics demonstrations of electricity, and it made me want to know more of this wonderful force. I was so good at math that I was able to do integral calculus in my head. I completed high school in just 3 years, graduating in 1873. After graduating, I was determined to pursue a career in engineering. I enrolled at the Austrian Polytechnic Institute in Graz, Austria, in 1875. It was here that I studied a Gram dynamo, an electrical generator that produces direct current. Observing that the dynamo functioned like an electric motor when the direction of its current was reversed, I began thinking of ways this alternating current could be used in industrial applications. Though I never graduated, and it was not uncommon back then, I received excellent grades and was even given a letter from the dean of the technical faculty addressed to my father stating, "Your son is a star of first rank." Feeling that chastity would help me focus on my career, I never married or had any known romantic relationships. One of my admirers wrote a book in 2001 called Tesla, Man Out of Time. Biographer Margaret Cheney writes that I felt myself to be unworthy of women, considering them to be superior to me in every way. I mean honestly, look how beautiful women are, and they are like fragile flowers. Later in life, however, I publicly expressed strong dislike of what I called the new woman. I felt were abandoning their femininity in an attempt to dominate men. In 1881, I moved to Budapest, where for a time I worked at the Central Telephone Exchange. It was while in Budapest that the idea for the induction motor first came to me, but after several years of trying to gain interest in his invention, at age 28 I decided to leave Europe for America. Once I decided to move, the manager of the Continental Edison facility in Paris was transferred back to the United States in 1884. He asked that I be brought to the U.S. as well. In June 1884, I emigrated to the United States and went to work at the Edison Machine Works in New York City, where Edison's DC-based electrical lighting system was fast becoming the standard. Just 6 months later, I quit Edison after a heated dispute over unpaid wages and bonuses. In my diary, notebook from the Edison Machine Works, 1884 to 1885, I marked the end of the amicable relationship between the two great inventors. Across 2 pages, I wrote in large letters, "Goodbye to the Edison Machine Works." I worked there for a year, impressing Edison with my diligence and ingenuity. At one point Edison told me he would pay $50,000 for an improved design for his DC dynamos. After months of experimentation, I presented a solution and asked for the money. Edison demurred, saying, "I don't understand his American humor." I quit soon after. Several months later, Thomas and I parted ways due to a conflicting business-scientific relationship, attributed by historians to our incredibly different personalities. While Edison was a power figure who focused on marketing and financial success, I was commercially out of touch and somewhat vulnerable. By March 1885, with the financial backing of businessmen Robert Lane and Benjamin Vail, I started my own lighting utility company, Tesla Electric Light and Manufacturing. Instead of Edison's incandescent lamp bulbs, my company installed a DC-powered arc lighting system I had designed while working at Edison Machine Works. While my arc light system was praised for its advanced features, my investors, Lane and Vail, had little interest in my ideas for perfecting and harnessing alternating current. In 1886, they abandoned my company to start their own company. The move left me penniless, forcing me to survive by taking electrical repair jobs and digging ditches for $2 per day. It was a very difficult part of my life, and it made me feel like all the work I had done was for naught. Of this period of hardship, I would later recall, my high education in various branches of science, mechanics, and literature seemed to me like a mockery. During my time of near destitution, my resolve to prove the superiority of alternating current over Edison's direct current grew even stronger. Now, let me tell you about my very first solar venture. In April 1887, I, along with my investors, Western Union Telegraph Superintendent Alfred S. Brown and attorney Charles F. Peck, founded the Tesla Electric Company in New York City for the purpose of developing new types of electric motors and generators. I soon developed a new type of electromagnetic induction motor that ran on alternating current. Patented in May 1888, my motor proved to be simple, dependable, and not subject to the constant need for repairs that plagued direct current-driven motors at the time. In July 1888, I sold my patent for AC-powered motors to Westinghouse Electric Corporation, owned by electrical industry pioneer George Westinghouse. In the deal, which proved financially lucrative for me, Westinghouse Electric got the rights to market my AC motor and agreed to hire me as a consultant. With Westinghouse now backing AC and Edison backing DC, the stage was set for what would become known as the War of the Currents. Recognizing the economic and technical superiority of alternating current to his direct current for long-distance power distribution, Edison undertook an unprecedented aggressive public relations campaign to discredit AC as posing a deadly threat to the public. A force should never be allowed in their homes. Edison and his associates toured the U.S., presenting grisly public demonstrations of animals being electrocuted with AC electricity. When New York State sought a faster, more humane alternative to hanging for executing condemned prisoners, Edison, though once a vocal opponent of capital punishment, recommended using AC-powered electrocution. In 1890, murderer William Kemmler became the first person to be executed in a Westinghouse AC generator-powered electric chair that had been secretly designed by one of Edison's salesmen. Despite his best efforts, Edison failed to discredit alternating current. In 1892, Westinghouse and Edison's new company General Electric competed head-to-head for the contract to supply electricity to the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago. When Westinghouse ultimately won the contract, the fair served as a dazzling public display of my AC system. On the tails of their success at the World's Fair, Westinghouse and I won a historic contract to build the generators for a new hydroelectric power plant at Niagara Falls. In 1896, the power plant began delivering AC electricity to Buffalo, New York, 26 miles away. In his speech at the opening ceremony of the power plant, I said of the accomplishment, "It signifies the subjugation of natural forces to the service of man, the discontinuance of barbarous methods, the relieving of millions from want and suffering." The success of the Niagara Falls power plant firmly established my AC as the standard for the electric power industry, effectively ending the War of the Currents. Now let me tell you about my inventions. They are quite impressive, you know. Some inventions that I created that you may not even be aware. I held around 112 registered U.S. patents for his work. It should also be known that I filed a number of patents in other countries, but some of these records are harder to definitively quantify with certainty today. It is believed that I held somewhere in the order of 196 patents for my tech, across 26 countries worldwide. Of the non-US patents, the largest number appears to have been filed in Great Britain, with 30 patents granted. I also held about 10 patents in France, 27 in Belgium, 21 in Germany, 19 in Italy, and 15 in Austria. It also appears that I have filed a handful of patents in a number of other countries, including Spain, Belgium, Brazil, and Italy, because I am just that cool. Interestingly, according to an analysis of my patents, my most protected invention was my pump and turbine. US patents 1,061,142 and 1,061,206. For these, I was granted 23 patents in 22 countries. Of all my patents, 54 were granted in the United States. 1889 appears to have been my most prolific year, with a total of 39 patents filed relating to my polyphase system. So here are the top inventions. Number 1, the Tesla coil. Number 2, the magnifying transmitter. Number 3, the Tesla turbine. The shadowgraph. The radio. The neon lamp. The Niagara Falls transformer house. The induction motor. The radio-controlled boat. Alternating current. Throughout my career, I discovered, designed and developed ideas for a number of important inventions, most of which were officially patented by other inventors, including dynamos, electrical generators similar to batteries, and the induction motor. I was also a pioneer in the discovery of radar technology, X-ray technology, remote control and the rotating magnetic field, the basis of most AC machinery. I am most well known for my contributions in AC electricity and for the Tesla coil. AC electrical system. I designed the alternating current, AC, electrical system, which would quickly become the preeminent power system of the 20th century and has remained the worldwide standard ever since. In 1887, I found funding for my new Tesla electric company, and by the end of the year, I had successfully filed several patents for AC-based inventions. In 1887 and 1888 I was granted more than 30 patents for my inventions and invited to address the American Institute of Electrical Engineers on his work. My lecture caught the attention of George Westinghouse, the inventor who had launched the first AC power system near Boston and was Edison's major competitor in the Battle of the Currents. Convinced that my inventions would help him achieve this, in 1888 he purchased my patents for $60,000 in cash and stock in the Westinghouse Corporation. As interest in an AC system grew, Westinghouse and I were put in direct competition with Thomas Edison, who was intent on selling his direct current, DC, system to the nation. A negative press campaign was soon waged by Edison, in an attempt to undermine interest in AC power. Westinghouse hired me, licensed the patents for his AC motor and gave me my own lab. In 1890 Edison arranged for a convicted New York murderer to be put to death in an AC-powered electric chair, a stunt designed to show how dangerous the Westinghouse standard could be. Unfortunately for Edison, the Westinghouse Corporation was chosen to supply the lighting at the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, and I conducted demonstrations of my AC system there. During the 1890s Mark Twain struck up a friendship with me. Twain often visited me in my lab, where in 1894 I photographed the great American writer in one of the first pictures ever lit by phosphorescent light. Now to tell you about the hydroelectric power plant. In 1895, I designed what was among the first AC hydroelectric power plants in the United States, at Niagara Falls. The following year, it was used to power the city of Buffalo, New York, a feat that was highly publicized throughout the world and helped further AC electricity's path to becoming the world's power system. Let me tell you about my Tesla coil. In 1891, I patented the Tesla coil, an electrical transformer circuit capable of producing high-voltage, low-current AC electricity. Though best known today for its use in spectacular, lightning-spitting demonstrations of electricity, I would go on to use my Tesla coil in experiments with radio remote control, fluorescent lighting, X-rays, electromagnetism, and universal wireless power transmission. On July 30, 1891, the same year I patented my Tesla coil, and at 35-year-old, I was sworn in as a naturalized United States citizen. Radio remote control. At the 1898 Electrical Exposition in Boston's Madison Square Gardens, I demonstrated an invention I called a telautomaton, a 3-foot-long, radio-controlled boat propelled by a small battery-powered motor and rudder. Members of the amazed crowd accused me of using telepathy, a trained monkey, or pure magic to steer the boat. Finding little consumer interest in radio-controlled devices, I tried unsuccessfully to sell his tell-automatics idea to the US Navy as a type of radio-controlled torpedo. However, during and after World War I, 1914 to 1918, the militaries of many countries, including the United States, incorporated it. Wireless power transmission. From 1901 through 1906, I spent most of my time and savings working on arguably my most ambitious, if far-fetched, project, an electrical transmission system I believed could provide free energy and communications throughout the world without the need for wires. In 1901, with the backing of investors headed by financial giant J.P. Morgan, I began building a power plant and massive power transmission tower at his Wardenclyffe Laboratory on Long Island, New York. Seizing on the then commonly held belief that the Earth's atmosphere conducted electricity, I envisioned a globe-spanning network of power transmitting and receiving antennas suspended by balloons 30,000 feet, 9,100 meters, in the air. However, as my project drug on, its sheer enormity caused my investors to doubt its plausibility and withdraw their support. With his rival, Guglielmo Marconi, enjoying the substantial financial support of steel magnate Andrew Carnegie and Thomas Edison, was making great advances in his own radio transmission developments, I was forced to abandon my wireless power project in 1906. Later life and death. In 1922, I, deeply in debt from my failed wireless power project, was forced to leave the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City where I had been living since 1900, and move into the more affordable St. Regis Hotel. While living at the St. Regis, I took to feeding pigeons on the windowsill of his room, often bringing weak or injured birds into his room to nurse them back to health. I loved the pigeons and they brought joy into my life. Of his love for one particular injured pigeon, I would write, "I have been feeding pigeons, thousands of them for years. But there was one, a beautiful bird, pure white with light grey tips on its wings, that one was different. It was a female. I had only to wish and call her and she would come flying to me. I loved that pigeon as a man loves a woman, and she loved me. As long as I had her, there was a purpose to my life." By late 1923, the St. Regis evicted me because of unpaid bills and complaints about the smell from keeping pigeons in his room. For the next decade, I would live in a series of hotels, leaving behind unpaid bills at each. Finally, in 1934, my former employer, Westinghouse Electric Company, began paying I $125 per month as a consulting fee, as well as paying his rent at the Hotel New Yorker. My life as an old man was not easy, and in 1937, at age 81, I was knocked to the ground by a taxicab while crossing a street a few blocks from the New Yorker. Though I suffered a severely wrenched back and broken ribs, I characteristically refused extended medical attention. While I did survive the incident, the full extent of my injuries, from which I never fully recovered, was never known. On January 7, 1943, I died alone in my room at the New Yorker Hotel at the age of 86. The medical examiner listed my cause of death as coronary thrombosis, a heart attack, at least this is what is reported. In September 2016, the FBI finally declassified documents pertaining to the mysterious death and suspected murder of famous inventor Nikola Tesla. While there were many fascinating facts in the details around my untimely death, one of the most intriguing centered around the very last invention that the genius recluse had planned to bring to life, a machine simply referred to as the death ray. Given that I was presumably murdered, with all my research being stolen, the question is, did I finish the death ray? Was I murdered because my creation was too powerful? Are the plans for this killing machine in the hands of someone who would use it for nefarious plots? Was it Adolf Hitler himself who ordered the assassination of me? Yes, that is a theory that surfaces. So here is the alternative theory, and no, it is not a conspiracy theory, it is a theory. As World War II rages on in Europe in January of 1943, America's most prolific inventor, Nikola Tesla, is found murdered in a New York City hotel room. My safe had been emptied with its contents stolen, and it's not until September of 2016 that the classified files from the resulting investigation are released to the public. The first question is, why would the FBI be involved with this in the first place? I was not a high-profile bank robber or an international terrorist. So why would the government have hundreds and hundreds of classified documents on an inventor? Military analyst and investigator Jack Murphy asks in Tesla's Death Ray, a murder declassified. Given that it's known that I was designing a powerful death ray, many believe that the FBI were attempting to get their hands on the world's very first weapon of mass destruction at a pivotal wartime period. I myself admitted that my death ray would be able to take down enemy planes hundreds of kilometers in the distance. But as Murphy, Prince and Costco dug deeper into the plans, released documents and historical accounts of me, they also realized that the death ray may also have another, more important purpose. It wasn't just a weapon. I theorized that a system like the death ray would be key to unlocking large-scale wireless power distribution. I conceived of the kind of technology the world is building today, only 100 years ago. The story of my birth and life are almost as incredible as my own designs. I was born in 1856 in my family home in Croatia, as you know, but what you did not know was that it was during a particularly strong lightning storm. From my very early years, I was described by family and friends as not a normal boy, often sitting completely still for hours and memorizing enormous books on geography, science and engineering. When I arrived in America at the age of 28 to reveal my signature invention, alternating current electricity, which was more powerful and efficient than Thomas Edison's designs. Despite becoming the toast of high society, I was uncomfortable in the spotlight and retreated to my lab, often without being seen for days or weeks on end. Strange tremors and vibrations in the areas surrounding my house and lab were reported, and even led neighbors to speculate that I was building an earthquake machine, according to Tesla's Death Ray, a murder declassified. The rumors surrounding what exactly I was creating in my lab persisted until my death, and were further inflated in the subsequent decades. On January 10, 1943, New York City Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia delivered a eulogy to me broadcast live over WNYC radio. On January 12, over 2,000 people attended my funeral at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. Following the funeral, my body was cremated at Ferncliff Cemetery in Ardsley, New York. With the United States then fully engaged in World War II, fears that the Austrian-born inventor might have been in possession of devices or designs helpful to Nazi Germany, and this is what drove the Federal Bureau of Investigation to seize my possessions after my death. However, the FBI reported finding nothing of interest, concluding that since about 1928, my work had been primarily of a speculative, philosophical, and somewhat promotional character, often concerned with the production and wireless transmission of power, but did not include new, sound, workable principles or methods for realizing such results. One thing I must note for future reference. From February 1944 to the end of the war in Europe, John G. Trump, Donald J. Trump's uncle, was the director of the BBRL. In early 1943, 2 days after my death, the Federal Bureau of Investigation ordered the Office of Alien Property Custodian to seize my belongings. John G. Trump was called in to analyze the Tesla artifacts, which were being held in government custody. After a 3-day investigation, Trump's report concluded that there was nothing which would constitute a hazard in unfriendly hands. In his 1944 book, Prodigal Genius, The Life of Tesla, journalist and historian John Joseph O'Neill wrote that, "I claim to have never slept more than 2 hours per night, dozing during the day instead to recharge his batteries." He was reported to have once spent 84 straight hours without sleep working in his laboratory. Legacy. Today, my legacy can be seen in multiple forms of popular culture, including movies, TV, video games and several genres of science fiction. For example, in the 2006 movie The Prestige, David Bowie portrays me developing an amazing electro-replicating device for a magician. In Disney's 2015 film Tomorrowland, A World Beyond, I helped Thomas Edison, Gustav Eiffel, and Jules Verne discover a better future in an alternate dimension. And in the 2019 film The Current War, I, played by Nicholas Hoult, squares off with Thomas Edison, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, in a history-based depiction of the War of the Currents. In 1917, I was awarded the Edison Medal, the most coveted electrical prize in the United States, and in 1975, I was inducted into the Inventors Hall of Fame. In 1983, the United States Postal Service issued a commemorative stamp honoring me. Most recently, in 2003, a group of investors headed by engineer and futurist Elon Musk founded Tesla Motors, a company dedicated to producing the first car fittingly powered totally by my obsession, electricity. Death ray. I lived my last decades in a New York hotel, working on new inventions even as my energy and mental health faded. My obsession with the number 3 and fastidious washing were dismissed as the eccentricities of genius. He spent his final years feeding, and, I claimed, communicating with, the city's pigeons. After suffering a nervous breakdown following the closure of my free energy project, I eventually returned to work, primarily as a consultant. But as time went on, my ideas became progressively more outlandish and impractical. I grew increasingly eccentric, devoting much of his time to the care of wild pigeons in the parks of New York City. I even drew the attention of the FBI with my talk of building a powerful death ray, which had received some interest from the Soviet Union during World War II. But in the end, was it really just talk? This was a letter that was posted to the FBI FOIA reading room. Please stop asking J. Edgar Hoover about Tesla's death ray. Up until my death, the FBI director had to repeatedly clarify that the Bureau wasn't in possession of my secret files. Written by J. Pat Brown, edited by Michael Morrissey. Files posted to the Federal Bureau of Investigation's FOIA reading room show that for over 20 years, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover had to politely clarify that the Bureau was in fact not in possession of my plans for a death ray, but were they? Hoover's headache began in 1940, when the New York New York Times published an interview with me, who had fallen on hard times in my old age and was trying to sell the U.S. government on the idea of my Teleforce device, which was actually referred to by the Times as a death ray. Leave it to the New York Times to issue fake news, or was it?